All right, this is the last step for us to create production-ready CSS using Webpack. Of course, there is plenty of room and tools out there for stuff in between. Depending on the complexity of the app you're working on, you may or may not want to incorporate them. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but this setup right here will get you pretty far. Just think about it. We've got a way of now organizing and re-referencing our CSS. We have a way of splitting it out and importing it depending on application structure, not just like a random CSS structure. It's more related to our app. And we are using a preprocessor if we so choose. We're able to resolve assets. And also, because we're doing that, we can have room to transform assets as well. We are prefixing it, and we will now be minifying it. So as you can see, where we last left off, I have two separate CSS files per page. One is the common, one is the stuff for that page. And remember, in the last video, I prefixed here with auto prefixer. We have these different display properties. So everything is pretty efficient. I'm only downloading the CSS per that page, and the common can be cached and used for both pages, so even faster on secondary pages. And I'm prefixing here for browser support. So the last thing to do to actually make this perfect for production is to minify it. And it couldn't be any easier. I basically append a question mark here after the CSS loader. And what this does is loaders have options that you can pass to them. And the way you do that is with a query string. And I can really, it couldn't be any easier. And you know, if all the crap Webpack gets for being complicated, this is pretty great. I literally just passed that query string, but basically is saying minimize to be true. And once this is done, now you can see my common styles are minified, and so are my home styles. Nice and compact there. And you see I still have all my auto prefixes. So that's pretty much it. Video over, ready to go, launch the app, right? Well, yes, that is all you need to minimize in truth. But let's take this time to go over how we can now finally turn this into a great workflow, right? So in our scripts right now, I've been using the whole time this npm start command and just launching webpack-dev-server. Great. Now what we want to do is we want a separate build command. So like I was saying before, pretty much after we did pre-processing, everything after that, the auto prefixing, the extracting to text, that stuff, while you can use it in development, which is how I'm running it right now, it's not ideal because you're doing extra work that doesn't need to be done in your development process. It's just more for production. So it's just slowing down your rebuilds and stuff like that. So obviously on a larger app, that will become much more noticeable. So let's be efficient here and only do that stuff in production. So I'm going to create a build script in my package.json here. And if you're not familiar, what's really cool is we can use this thing called environment variables. And the common practice is to create the node environment and set it to either, you can set it to a bunch of different things, but the common practice is production, if this is building or running in production, development, if you're doing, obviously development stuff. And another one that's pretty common too is like test or something like that, if you have like a special environment for testing. So what we're distinguishing here is we have a development process and a production process, right? So what I'm going to do is I have it for my build. So when we build, we're building for production. When we run this, we're saying we're in development mode, okay? So now, and typically what you'd want to do is if you're building for production, you'd want to actually build out the files, of course, right? So you want to run Webpack, but just for the speed of the video here and so you can see what's going on, I'm just going to be running the dev server, but I will run it at the end just so you can see the compilation. All right, So basically the only thing difference between these two scripts right now is that one's the development environment and one's production. And what's cool about this is we have access to this variable basically in our files. And so what I can do here is in the top of my webpack config.json. And remember that the cool thing about setting up your webpack config is that it's just a JavaScript file and just one big JavaScript object. So what's really cool is we can just use JavaScript to change our webpack config accordingly. So what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing the environment variable by doing process.env. That's where your environment variables get set, and I'm referencing the node environment variable. And I'm saying if it's triple equals to production, then obviously it will evaluate to true. So that's why I've saved it to this variable called isProduction. So if we're running in production mode, isProduction will be true. If it's anything else besides production mode, we know we're not. So again, I only want to run this certain things if we're in production. So what I can do here is I'm going to, you can imagine basically, okay, I don't want to minimize if I'm developing, and we don't want to bother with prefixing. So I can cut that out, and basically I've made it into a quick ternary here called process CSS, right? So if we're in production mode, I want to minimize and use the post CSS loader. I'm saying that to a variable called process CSS. And again, feel free to modify this to any other way you like to do it, because again, it's just JavaScript we're working with here. And so what I can do down here in my loader, right? So remember that without that stuff, it's pretty much just this. So what I can do here is make this a template string, right? And so now it's going to put either this string into there, meaning that Webpack will run it through auto prefixer and then minimize all the CSS, or it'll put an empty string in there, meaning it won't do any of that stuff, right? And then down here, in our extract text plugin, right, we don't really want to do this if we're in development mode. And so what's really neat is the extract text plugin has a property on its configuration object that's called disable. And if it's set to true, the extract text plugin won't run, which is why we had to specify this fallback loader, right? So if the extract text plugin is disabled, or if you don't have the all chunks options on, it will use the style loader for the rest of the stuff, right? So we want to disable extract text plugin if we're not in production, right? And let's give it a whirl. So I'm going to stop this process. I'm going to rerun npm start. So remember, npm start is our development mode. It's building, it's building, it's building. Awesome. So now refresh the page here, and you see that we no longer have, in our HTML, we no longer get the script tag injected because we no longer have CSS files. It's all left back in the JS like we originally had it. And if I look at my elements here, again, the style loader is taking over, and it's injecting these style tags into the head. And you can see that the CSS has no prefixes and it's not minified. Now, if I stop that process, go to my terminal, and I do npm run build, you can see it's going to run in production mode. And let's see what happens. All right, so even I can just inspect the output here. So you see now we get our CSS files back, comment, about, and home. And if I look here, the HTML injects the two CSS style sheets into the head, as opposed to the style loader injecting them via style tags. And we can look, it's minified. So let's use the Chrome tools to unminify it. And I have my prefixes here. Awesome. So you can see just by changing the command, we get this powerful functionality added to our process, and it's very quick and simple. I'm going to terminate the process, and just to show to you for the last part of this series, I'm going to change it. Instead from dev server, we're going to run it as Webpack. npm run build. So now, instead of using Webpack Dev-server to serve up those files in memory, we are building to our distribution file. All right, so you see now I have this distribution folder here. Let's open it up. Awesome. So now you can see I have this crazy bundle here of JavaScript. Let's close all this. I have index.html, which is like my home HTML, and it has the style sheets for common and for home. About will have just like it has. And you can see I have common styles, minified, right? And my home bundle, oops, where is the home styles? Home styles is also minified, and I have my vendor prefixes there. And I have my PNG copied over. So everything is ready to go. You can push this up to your repo or whatever you do, and you have all your nice bundled stuff ready to go. So that's it for the CSS stuff. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you'd like to go over, if I can be in help in any way, please post them in the comments and I will try to make a video. Thanks for watching.